Hey, Michael here. And before we get into the episode, I just want to let you know that enrollment is now open for my flagship program, the 2026 Leadership Mindset Accelerator. If you're interested in significantly leveling up your leadership with this live 3-month course, stick around until after the episode and I'll tell you more about it. In the meantime, here's your show. Welcome back to part 2 of me getting interviewed by Hugo Dalbaum. Last week, we covered the tactical shift from doer to leader. And today, we're going deep inside your head. We're discussing a concept I call the curse of experience. It explains why, as you get more successful, you actually become more afraid of risk because you are terrified of damaging your identity as a successful person. In this episode, we're going to break down how to fight that stagnation, why imposter syndrome is actually a good sign, and I'll walk you through the ARC model, my 3-step framework for handling high-stake crises without losing your cool. And just another heads up on the production of this episode. Hugo has quite a bit of an accent, so he asked us to replace his voice with an AI voice so you get the best recording quality and make sure you can hear and understand everything. Let's get to work.
Welcome to Leadership Mindset 2.0. Practical neuroscience and psychology to transform you from a tactical doer into a strategic leader. Here is your host, former social entrepreneur of the year and coach to some of the world's top executives, R. Michael Anderson.
Let's talk about managing the ego and the inner critic. You've written about how a leader's ego can sabotage any efforts to change by resisting risk. Risk essentially showing up as procrastination, insecurity, or fear. Instead of fighting the ego, you suggest reframing it as something to cooperate with, as a protective mechanism rather than something to defeat. How does that work with regards to, for example, imposter syndrome, which you say can actually be a good thing?
Yeah, so I do talk a lot about the ego and the authentic self, and your ego's job is to protect yourself. And so the ego isn't necessarily bad. It just gets deployed often when we don't want it deployed. So the ego, anytime you experience any type of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, fear, anxiety, that is part of your subconscious thinking that you need protected at that time. And so what you want to do is when you notice yourself going into one of those areas, and you can just observe it and almost laugh at it. When I say laugh at it, make it fun. Like, oh, that's just my ego trying to protect myself. Because the ego, since its job is meant to keep you safe, it does not like change. So any change, it will resist through imposter syndrome, stress, fear, self-doubt, getting sick, etc. It will sabotage you in all these different ways. The thing is, when you can have when you notice that happening, you can say, you know what? My ego just doesn't like this change. That's what it is. When you understand the reason, it can take a lot of the edge off. And you can even tell your ego, hey, I know this is a little different right now. Let's go forward anyway. And we're going to be okay. We're still going to be safe no matter what. The reason I say imposter syndrome could be a good thing is you know who never gets imposter syndrome? That person sitting on their couch that never does anything different. The person that does get imposter syndrome is a person always pushing themselves into new and different and bigger situations. If you are experiencing imposter syndrome, what that means is most likely you've just taken a big step. You're taking a bit of a risk. You're playing out of your comfort zone. So the fact that you have it is probably a good thing because you are challenging yourself. Now, just because you have it and you've realized you have it and it may be a bit of a good thing, doesn't mean you have to stay there. Just understand that it's your ego trying to protect yourself. So think about what is your ego scared of? What does it change your ego scared of? And then have a bit of a conversation with it and your other internal voices to realize that you've still got it covered, that you'll be all right.
What would you say the goal is for imposter syndrome? Do you want to stay and always feel imposter syndrome, or do you want to mat it down? With time, say I'm in a role in the first 2 years, I feel very much an imposter. Then when I don't feel like an imposter anymore, jump into a new role. Do you get my question there?
If you practice these, you'll get better and better at recognizing it. And because what we want to do is, this goes back to self-worth. And I talk about how self-worth is when our ego levels out our amount of achievements. And so we always like to have a balance. Our subconscious always like to have a balance between our self-worth and our level of achievements. What happens is when our achievements are greater than our self-worth, then anytime there's a gap, that's imposter syndrome. But what we can do is when we can get so secure as a human being that our self-worth is way above our achievements, that it's like, hey, I really believe in myself and my capabilities, then our achievements will run to catch up with our self-worth, and we won't experience imposter syndrome anymore.
So it's about elevating self-worth above achievements rather than constantly chasing new roles. Let's move on to your ARC model. You present this three-part framework: awareness, response, compassion, to help leaders handle challenges or challenging situations more effectively. How would you advise a senior leader to advise the ARC approach in a high-stakes moment, for example, during a crisis or a tough negotiation, so that they can respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively?
Yeah, so that's why I did come up with the ARC process: awareness, response, compassion, to help in different situations, especially high-stress situations. And to just walk everybody through it very quickly, A is for awareness. Normally, when a crisis happens or something pops into what I say our field of view, so we get an email, a text, a Teams note, a WhatsApp voice note that something has gone off the rails, as it is. Often, we need to take a step and just to have more awareness of what the real problem is. And so that means slowing down, taking a breath, because awareness goes with response. So awareness is, okay, something happened, I'm going to take a breath. And as a leader, I want to address the root cause of what's really going on. Because the next is response. Now, as a human, we can have a reaction, and a reaction is normally emotional. It's from the ego. It's like if something bad happens, my reaction might be, oh crap, or get angry or something else, or get scared. It's okay to have reactions, but as a leader, that doesn't help us. What a response is when we, again, with awareness, we take a breath. What's really going on here? What's needed from me as a leader right now? And then I choose a very intelligent, well thought out course of action instead of just flying off the handle. So in simplicity, it is just awareness and response are to just slow down, pause, and think about what you're going to do before you do it, to put it in really real simple terms. And that can really go a long way, because some people just act from a reaction and don't even have any awareness all the time. And then the third is compassion. It's a little bit about compassion for other people, but mostly it's for compassion for ourselves. Because I don't know about anybody else out there, but as a leader, I'm harder on myself than anybody else could ever be on me. I hold myself at such a high expectation and perfectionist and everything else. And so what the compassion is, it's to give myself a freaking break. And so everybody out there, most people listening to this, reading this, watching this, whatever, are going to be high achievers. And as high achievers, sometimes we can really get down on ourselves, and that really sucks our energy and everything else out. So it's really just about giving ourselves a break. Think about all the amazing stuff that you did do, not the one thing you didn't do perfectly. Think about all the people that you helped and really focus on that instead of anything else.
Would you say that any one of these three is more important than the other, or is the interplay between them?
Well, I say compassion. I say it's the last one. It's often the one that people have the hardest time getting their head around, but it's the most important. Everything that I teach, it revolves around people's relationship with themselves. And when we can come into a more loving, compassionate relationship with ourselves, then we have true resilience. Then people really connect with us because we're in tune with who we truly are. That's real authenticity. And that's where you get great vulnerability, is when you can have that compassion with yourself and stop beating yourself up, stop trying to be somebody else, stop doubting yourself. It all comes from self-compassion. It's a bit of a deep principle, and it takes some people, including me, pretty much all of us, time to get our head around and in a lifetime to master. And some people think, oh my gosh, if I have too much self-compassion, I won't be that successful. Because a lot of us, me included, I became very successful by being very, very hard on myself. And a lot of people are like, if I'm too compassionate with myself, am I still going to be as successful? I can tell you, you absolutely will be, and you'll be more successful because you're going to be so much easier to connect to. You are going to have so much more energy. You're going to see things from a higher level view. You're going to be more strategic. And life is so much better when you are nice to yourself.
You mentioned resilience as well, which I believe is a real key competency of a leader today. Can you put a few more words on your view on resilience as a leader today?
Absolutely. Again, everything that I do, when I talk about leadership and leading other people, my core foundational concept around leadership is your leadership is a reflection of the relationship with yourself. And again, when you can really develop that relationship with yourself, you are going to do so many things better. You are going to think better. You're going to act better. You're going to make better decisions. You're going to set better boundaries. You are going to have better relationships with people, and you're going to have better resilience because you are going to know who you are. You're going to understand your stressors. You're going to be able to make so many more decisions around you that are going to support you as a person. Oftentimes, we need resilience when there's things that we don't do, which lead us to needing resilience, like we don't set proper boundaries, we don't stand up for ourselves, we say yes too much. And when we can develop these, when we're very secure with ourselves, then we set proper boundaries. Then we say no when we're being overloaded, or we delegate, we get things off of our plate, and we really give ourselves the time and the space to do things properly. And like every leader, like every high achiever, high performer, there are times where we got to suck it up and work really long hours and take massive amounts of responsibility. However, because we have such a strong relationship with ourselves, we don't take things personally. We still do good self-care. We understand that it's going to be over, that it's not going to last forever. And so I like to work on the really deep part of these issues. I'm sure you can read some blog that's going to tell you the 5 ways or the 10 ways to overcome resilience. And it's not that those are bad, but when we can really go deep and work on the relationship with ourselves, great resilience is a byproduct of that from doing the deep work.
Nice. That one I really liked. Your leadership is a reflection of your relationship with yourself. That maybe become the header for the memo.
Good. Good.
Okay. Psychological safety in action. You describe psychological safety as a two-way street. What do you mean by that, and how can leaders actively foster it in practice?
Leadership is very hard to measure because you could have 2 different leaders in 2 different companies, and one, the market goes up in their, if they're a car dealer or distributor, and the other, if they're in, heavy metals or something, and the metals go down. Obviously, the leadership, the performance of the company or the team may go up and down with so many different external factors. Google, a little while ago, did a really big research project called Aristotle. And what that did is that measured what was similar with all their high-performing teams. And one of the big ones was psychological safety. That meant how safe did people feel to challenge the boss, to share ideas in a meeting, to maybe push back on different ideas and have a really healthy discussion with people not just saying yes or falling in line. So they really felt safe to be themselves, to take risks like we talked about, etc. A lot has been talked about what a leader needs to do to create psychological safety, and that's absolutely true. As a leader, you want to have meetings where if people challenge you, instead of getting angry at them, you have curiosity. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe and to say, hey, it's okay to challenge me and to model that, what that looks for and to encourage it. You want to make sure you treat everybody with respect. You want to make sure you're not cutting off people. You're not, especially certain people, that you're making sure that they're heard, etc. So that's what leaders can do. In addition, individual team members can really need to show up with some resilience. If somebody says a word that you don't agree with, maybe you don't need to go off the handle for that. Maybe you don't have to think that somebody has it out for you. You as a person can really develop some internal resilience to things and not take things personally, not make a big deal out of relatively small things, and also get challenged. And as a leader, what you want to do is you want to challenge your team. If there's somebody who's a high performer and they haven't had a challenge in a couple months, put them on a project that's outside of their comfort zone. What you need to do as a leader is look at your team and say, hey, has this person been having it easy for a while? And is that within their personality? And if not, your job is to give them something to stretch them. If you talk to athletes and you say, who is your best coach? It's never their easiest coach. It's the coach that saw the potential in them and that pushed them. And so my question to you leaders is, are you being that person? Are there people on your team and you're like, hey, you're capable of more. I'm going to put you in a position that's going to make you sweat a little bit, but I know you can handle it and I got your back. And so you're there to really help them grow. And so that's what we need to do as leaders. We need to always be challenging people. The other side of that is if they've been having a lot of challenges, if they've been being stretched over the last couple of weeks and months, maybe we need to give them a break and to rest and recoup for a couple of weeks, because people always under stress, then they're going to get burnout and everything else. So that's what I mean by psychological safety. As a leader, we need to foster an environment where it's okay to challenge people, that we develop our own resilience, that we don't take things personally. That's the other side of the street for psychological safety.
Yeah, I like that. The coaches are often the hardest ones. And I think this also links with your view on growth leadership that we talked about earlier.
Yes, the reason I call the type of leadership I teach is called growth leadership, because it is all based on the leader growing as a person themselves. And because I have found that when I grow as a leader, when other people grow as a leader, then they grow their teams, and then they grow the revenue, they grow their impact, they grow the effect they're having out there, they grow the profit, they grow the market share, they grow everything else. But it all comes down to the leader's growth and the leaders growing those people around them, and then everybody grows and everything grows.
Okay, then we move into the seventh one. Avoiding the curse of experience. You are against what you call the cost of the experienced leader, the complacency and resistance to new ideas that can come with past successes. How can longtime leaders recognize when they're falling into that trap, and what can they do to continually stretch their mindset and stay adaptable amid evolving business challenges?
I've been looking into this more and more, and with experienced leaders, oftentimes what happens is we're real high achievers. And what we do is we experience some success. So we have this identity as a successful person, which we really like. I really like being looked at as a successful person. The thing is, because we're high achievers and we really value that, we really value the respect of others, as we get older, we take less risks. Because if we take a risk, we do a really risky thing and it fails, that identity is going to be challenged. Maybe I don't think of myself as successful. Maybe other people don't see me as successful. And it's well known. I mean, everybody out there can think of themselves when they're in their 20s and their 30s. They probably took a lot of risks. Like, I'll take any project on. I'll do this. I'll try this new position. I'll do this. Yet maybe now, if you're in your 40s or 50s or even 60s, you're probably like, I sort of like where I am. Maybe I don't want to risk everything. And look, there is some wisdom that comes with age, absolutely. And oftentimes we're here for our experience. But it's just a really interesting thing for us to be aware of, that we may not be as open to new ideas. We might not be open to some of this creativity. The older we get, the more we get stuck in our ways. So that is oftentimes a lot of the new startups are by people young, because they don't mind rallying against the status quo. So if you're later in your career and you find yourself a bit stuck, or you find yourself having some imposter syndrome or whatever that is, that's because you don't want to upset that identity. And then you got some work to do on being okay with not being perfect, with having that identity challenged, and really mixing it up again.
So do you think leaders today should take more risk?
I think what leaders need to do is they need to be aware of when they're not taking risks, when they're playing it too safe. And that is something that a lot of leaders really get stuck in. I'm having a lot more that are, in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're like, I have a lot more anxiety now than I did when I was younger. And so they stop taking the risks. And then anxiety comes because they don't want to break down the success that they've built up already. And so we just need to be aware of when we're there, and to make sure that that's not hampering us from not taking risks.
So it's about moving out of your comfort zone.
It is, and we can lie to ourselves the older we get that we do that, yet we are better at hiding in our comfort zone the older we get. Whether something succeeds or fails is not a reflection of you. And the thing about high-performing leaders is we often take over responsibility, that we think we can control everything. And we're normally a high performer because we like to control things. We're good at controlling things. The thing is, sometimes things just don't go our way. So leading back to risk and resilience, the more we can understand things are out of our control, the more powerful we're going to be. And the most simple thing you can do is, this was life-changing when I learned it myself. The only thing that's in my control is me, my behaviors, my actions. Not even all of my thoughts and not all of my feelings are in my control. But when I can really know that the only thing I can really control is my thoughts, behaviors, and actions right now, was really freeing for me. Here's a really interesting thing. If you ever experiencing stress is you trying to control something that's out of your control. You are trying to control a customer, an outside situation, somebody else's decision. And so when you realize that, hey, I'm experiencing stress, what am I trying to control that's not what I can control right now? Then oftentimes you can look at that a lot better. But again, where it comes to resilience, where it comes to risk, is to realize you can only control certain things in life. You can influence certain things through your actions and behaviors, but you can't directly control it. And when you apply that to both resilience, stress, and risk, you can become a much more powerful leader and a much more powerful person. All right, here's your challenge for this week. And it comes following on the discussion on stress. Remember, stress is trying to control something that's out of your control. So here's what I want you to be on the lookout for in the next few days. Anytime you're feeling stress, maybe a client's unhappy, maybe something's happening with the market, or whatever it is, stop and just do a little self-control audit. Ask yourself, am I trying to control something out of my control, or am I focusing on something that is in my control? Remember, you cannot often control a result. Any result outside of you is out of your control, but you can only control your thoughts, behaviors, and actions. And you're also very, very powerful when you do that. So bring the locus of control back inside yourself and really go and work with the things that are in your control. You're not only going to get a lot more sanity, you're going to become much more effective and more powerful yourself. Now that includes Hugo interviewing me. I hope you can see now why Leadership Mindset 2.0 isn't just a buzzword. I want to give a big thank you to Hugo, and I will see you on the next episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, I have a time-sensitive invitation for you. We are currently enrolling for the 2026 cohort of the Leadership Mindset Accelerator starting February 24th. This is not a pre-recorded video course where you watch everything alone. This is a 3-month mentorship journey with me. With live classes every other week, plus accountability and mindset integration anchors, you will actively rewire your leadership mindset so that your self-worth, self-trust, and natural confidence rises to a higher level than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to see what heights as a leader you can reach with the right support, go to rmichaelanderson.com/mindset. That's rmichaelanderson.com/mindset, or check out the show notes. Don't let another year go by hoping things change. Join us in February. I'll see you there.